Welcome to the Super Region 2 playoff preview. We have the semifinals coming, or the regional finals, this week. I'm Coach Poe. I'm joined with K Ferg, and we are really excited about this week's championship for Super Region 2.
Yeah, after 3 weeks in, now we got two teams standing as part of our series on the different super regions. And it's definitely one for the ages, that's for sure.
It really is. And if we take a look back at last week, Chris, I think Lenor Ryan defeats Benedict 35-25 on the road in a game that had a lot of question marks. You know, we wanted to see what Benedict was going to look like. How was Lenor Ryan going to come out on the road in the playoffs? Never won there. And you see right here, Dwayne McGee had a couple big runs. And the offense for Lenor Ryan, it took a little bit to get going, Chris, but they did, and they were able to score some points late when they needed it in the second half. First half, though, Benedict came out, and they came out swinging. They had a couple deep shots, got scored on a deep post, forced a couple guys to miss, and Benedict gave Lenor Ryan all they wanted to handle into the half, and actually had to lead at the half in a tough game on the road for the Bears, but Benedict, just answered it. And just at the end of the day, I felt like Chris didn't have enough on this day, but got to be extremely proud and happy for what you saw.
Yeah, Benedict was, after what happened last year, what you kind of was hoping was that Benedict would just have a much better showing than they did. And that's what happened. All the credit to what Chennis Berry and company have been able to do for the Tigers this year in particular. I think there were question marks going into this game, kind of wondering how effective they would be against a pretty stout front seven that Lenor Ryan had. And I thought what they did early on in that game, being able to go to the air, the way that Reginald Harden played at wide receiver, 3 touchdown receptions from Mayanus Dennis, kind of just showed you, if you got a game breaker, there's a lot of things you can do. Benedict wasn't really able to establish the run and be a little bit more balanced. And I think that the desire to try to do that in the third quarter really just did not help their cause. I thought they had a really good thing going on with the pass game. And, credit to Lenor Ryan making some adjustments. And I think they kind of leaned on that front four in order to sort of wear Benedict down. I think maybe there was some, you could see the depth starting to sort of play out in that game, especially in the fourth quarter. But nonetheless, the showing that Benedict had, first of all, being able to go in and lead the game at the half, despite having issues with the kicking game, to be able to do that is certainly a feat in itself. If there's a moral victory, certainly there for that. But Benedict was the 1 seed. People consider this to be a bit of an upset because of that, and that's kind of what we got.
Yeah, great game, phenomenal game, and the other game in Super Region 2 didn't disappoint either. Delta State 31, Valdosta State on the road 38, in a big win for the Blazers, and they played extremely well. Sammy Edwards did a great job running the football, was a really good complement to that very dangerous passing attack that they had, and their defense did just enough to keep Patrick Shegog off rhythm, off balance, and keep the Statesmen offensively at bay.
Yeah, when you look at what Delta was sort of able to do against Valdosta, there was already a game plan established for playing Valdosta, and I felt like they went right back to it. That's we're going to run the ball, and you kind of see this here with Christian Malloy running into the end zone on a short rushing play, but it was more than just that. You had Patrick Shegog very active in the rushing game. He actually rushed for a very long touchdown. And they just kind of went back to that playbook. Remember, Delta is the only team that's beaten Valdosta this year, and so go with what you know here. But certainly credit to Valdosta in being resilient. They did sort of like the first game. They got ahead early. Delta sort of weathered the storm, but this time they found a way to sort of respond. And I feel like in the end they ended up playing the game of field position because um, when that happens, sometimes all you need is a break, and that's
Yeah.
kind of what happened with Valdosta when Delta had to punt the ball and shanked it and gave Valdosta the ball inside of or on the Delta side of the field and let Sammy Edwards and company go to work and that's kind of what you saw with that last touchdown reception. You give Valdosta a short field and it's probably not going to end very well for the opponent. So
Well,
so yeah.
you're 100% right on that, Chris. 100% right. And I'll be honest, when that punt happened that you're talking about right there, it was almost like, oh no, like
Yeah.
Valdosta has just enough time and they're dangerous enough here to score. And there's not going to be a lot of time left to see what happens if Delta State gets the football back. So it was a scenario where it was, when that punt happened, you're like, this has been a great game so far. And is this gonna be the play that determines potentially the outcome of this game?
Yeah, I think that's what happened. But the other piece of this too was as agonizing as it may have been to watch Valdosta march down the field and score that BK Smith going into the end zone on that reception. They also had Eston Thiel who could kick the ball, and he kicked the ball on the last time they scored was a field goal, and he actually had to kick it from 40 plus twice,
Yeah.
and he made it both times. So it wasn't just the fact that they could get in via rushing, that they were a legitimate threat to kick the ball to win
Yeah.
the game. So
One of the things that stood out to me, Chris, to kind of hit back on that was with Valdosta was, they're an air raid offense, and that's what they hang their hat on. But to me, you can tell the maturation of the offense and of just not just the play calls, but the players themselves, because you look at Sammy Edwards and he's running the football, he's picking up third downs, big third downs with his feet. And that to me, when you're able to establish the run, everybody thinks you got to throw the football in air raid offense. But when you're really successful in the air raid, you're running the football typically a lot more than you're throwing the football, because they're going to take it away. If you saw Saturday, linebackers out of the box are trying to cover in the pass, and he's going to take the football down and run it. And so to me, when you're functioning at a high level like that, that is when you're able to establish the run. And that's what Valdosta really, they picked up a lot of first downs, pivotal third downs, third and longs, third and medium, third and longs on the ground. Sammy Edwards just extending plays.
yeah, and there was a play that they could have easily folded when Sammy tried to run
Mm-hmm.
for one of those first downs, and then ends up fumbling the ball away to Delta in the red zone
Yep.
and in the for Delta. So it's one of those things that having to bounce back mentally from that and just pick up where you go where you left off and continue to play just kind of shows you again also where Valdosta has come and where they seem to be headed.
Yeah. And that leads us to this week's game, Chris. Lenore Ryan goes on the road, travels to Valdosta in a, I'm not going to say an unexpected home game going into this season. If you told me that this was the matchup, I don't know that I would have believed it. But we're here, Lenore Ryan on the road at Valdosta. Let's take a look first, I think, Chris. Let's take a look at Lenore Ryan, the road team this Saturday. What are some things that you think that they're going to have to do if they want to win the football game? What does their path look like?
Well, the one thing about that Lenore Ryan does really well offensively has been that they've been able to extend drives when needed. They're not just explosive plays, which is what they did against Benedict, but they also do know how to drive the field. And I think that that's something that they're going to have to be able to do, is not have as much reliance on big plays and more of being able to get down the field, and using that wide receiver core that they have to do it. And so, to me, I think there's an obvious one here. And I think with Valdosta, the run game is not the rushing defense is not that great, and so I do expect Lenor Ryan to pick up some yards on the ground, but if Valdosta is able to adjust and key in on that, then what do you do if you're Lenor Ryan? And I think that teams at this stage have the ability to make adjustments when the other team is adjusting, and Lenore Ryan certainly has the weapons to do it. It's more of a can they.
Yeah. Because I think for the Bears, on the road in a tough environment, right? Like Valdosta is not an easy place to play, particularly in the playoffs. And, for them, I think the thing, like you said, is they saw it on tape. They have to be able to take away Sammy Edwards and his run game on defense. They've got to keep the receivers in front of them, and they're going to have to make Valdosta get into second and long, third and long situations, put them in unadvantageous situations where they have to throw the football. And then offensively for Lenor Ryan, I think like you said, Kris, you have to establish that run for Lenor Ryan. You have to establish the run. And I think you have to, you have to give Sean White manageable throws. And what I mean by that is you have to set him up for success early, because that Valdosta defense is fast. The secondary, fast. You got to give him opportunities to make good throws, 50-50 ball. You have to give him opportunities to complete the ball, because I think if you can do that, if you're Lenor Ryan, it's going to take that run pressure off it. And they're going to have to drop into some sort of coverage, and you'll find some creases. Dwayne McGee could have a big game. So that's kind of how I see that going. On the flip side, though, Valdosta State, they come in and they were clicking on Saturday. Kris, what are your thoughts here for Valdosta?
Yeah, the machine that is the Valdosta offense. If there's keys to the game, it's certainly to me, it starts with the receivers here in this case. They've been able to find holes if you're playing zone. They've been able to use length if it's man to man.
Yeah.
Those guys really just have to keep it going, and find ways to sort of stretch that Lenore Ryan defense. And then, a lot of this also comes down to Sammy Edwards, who is a Harlan Hill candidate, and for him to be able to continue to extend plays like he did last week could become pivotal in a game like this. If you're the defense, then the secondary, as you kind of mentioned, plays very, very well. And I think all eyes are going to be on how do they match up and how do they work with Dwayne McGee, who was simply spectacular, rushed over 200 yards last week. Does Valdosta have what it takes to slow him down enough to put Lenore Ryan in some uncomfortable situations? Is one that I'm particularly interested in.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, the thing that I want to see from Valdosta is that growth offensively, right? Like you came out and I think from the first time we saw them play this year to now, they have grown and they've gotten better each week. And for me, the question is, okay, you showed this play. You showed, Sammy Edwards and his ability to run the football because of what the defense gave you. I am sure Lenore Ryan's going to come back, watch that film, come up with a play, come up with a scheme to keep him in the pocket, right? So now, hey, you've shown that. Now what is your adjustment? What is your check, check to check? Hey, you check that, I'm going to check this. What is your answer to that? And Coach Bowie and the rest of that staff down there, I'm sure they have that all, they're looking at that, scheming that up and that type of deal. So for me, it's what do you do next if you're Valdosta? And what's the next evolution and growth in that offense? And then if you're defensively, I think like you said, Kris, the secondary is fast and we know that they can cover. Well, how do you match up against Dwayne McGee? They've got a three-headed monster there, a tailback. And so they've got some options there and they're not afraid to get in more of a heavier set and try to run it at you. So it's going to be interesting to see how do you match that up? What is your scheme to that? And how do you get Lenore Ryan in third and long to me, again, it's that third and long situation, right? Like you take the run game out of it and you force Sean White to have to beat you in the air. So, which he can do. We've seen him be able to do that, particularly a couple weeks ago, but I think you have to get the Bears off rhythm and you have to create turnovers. That's going to be the other thing in this game. I think turnovers are going to be key. I just think if you can create turnovers and you can win the turnover battle, I think it's going to set you up real nicely, whichever team that might be. But, well, so if anybody's watched the Sunday show and they know what our picks are, Kris and I are representing our picks on the show this week. Kris wearing the blazer black and red shirt, and I've got the LR on the shirt. And so we told y'all if you tuned in to this show this week, you would give you our reasons for the pick. So I'll let you go, or I'll go first, Kris, and then you could tee it up after that. But I think for Lenor Ryan, I think that they're a gritty team and they have the ability to run the football. And anytime you can run the football and you play solid defense in the playoffs, doesn't matter if you're at home, on the road, it's going to suit you well. I think going down there, I think they've had a little bit of a chip on their shoulder of, hey, we've got to prove something to our, to people. And so they're setting the standard back to where they are. And so I think Lenor Ryan is going to be able to go on the road, run the football, play solid defense, and come out of there with a victory. They're going to stay on track. Dwayne McGee is going to have a big day. And so for that reason, I took, and I'm going to take Lenor Ryan in this game this week.
Well, let me tell you why you're wrong. Let me tell you why you're wrong. Lenor Ryan has a chip on the shoulder. There's no doubt about it. But Valdosta's chip is just on a different level because Valdosta is a championship-winning program. And, from where they have been from last year to this year, it's something that they just been building up for some time over the offseason. And when you look at just where this team has come from and what they've been able to accomplish, it's kind of like their get back year. It feels like, and again, it all starts with Sammy Edwards is a big piece of that offense and being able to make the right moves when necessary. I think we've seen Valdosta get into some shootouts, which they don't mind to do. Seems like,
yeah, for sure.
And I certainly like what they're able to do on special teams as well. You talk about 3 phases of the game. I think what concerns me about Lenor Ryan is when you're playing against the SAC versus what you're playing against the Go South. It's just a different level of competition. And if there is one team that can pull this off, it would be Lenor Ryan. They are the class of the South Atlantic. But I just think that Valdosta is going to have just a little bit more than what Lenor Ryan is going to bring to the table here. And again, it's at home, right? And I think that bodes well also for Valdosta this Saturday.
Well, for sure. And either way, make sure you tune in Saturday, tune in Sunday night. Let Kris and I know at some point, one of us is going to be right. One of us is going to be wrong. But right now the banter back and forth this week has been pretty fun. But either way, thank you for tuning in this week to the Super Region 2 regional final preview show. Enjoy football on Saturday. It's one of, as the season starts to wind down, there's less and less games and the games are getting better and better, I feel like, as we go. So for Kris Ferguson, I'm Coach Poe. And as always, enjoy your football Saturday, and we'll see you next week here on the Super Region 2 Playoff Show.